Hello, everyone. I'm Melissa McAllister, and you're listening to The Melissa Made Show. Now, for decades, I've dedicated myself to helping women break the cycle of dieting, navigate through all the fads, and change their lives through my nutrition coaching. Now, each week, I'm going to talk about everything from deep nutrition, mindset, self-care, the ideal workout routine, tips on how and why to implement intermittent fasting in your life, my favorite recipes that are not only crowd pleasers, but they're actually healthy for you, and so much more. Now, with small and consistent changes, you can defy aging while living a happier, healthier, and more heart-filled life. I'm so excited to show you it's possible with the right strategies that are so simple to adopt. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the Melissa Made Show. Now, I have to be honest with you. I have been asked to do a podcast probably going on about 8 years now, and I always dismissed it because I just was comfortable in the social media space. But I listened, and it was actually a few people that were very close to me that said, you know what? I would have never have met you had it not been for a few podcasts that you were on. And that really struck a chord with me. And I was like, okay, so there's my sign. If I create a podcast, it's going to give me the opportunity to reach more people. But not only that, it's going to give me the opportunity to help you find other amazing people. So I have just a wonderful lineup of speakers that I'm just so excited and humbled to interview. But I know that in order to start this podcast, I need to share a little bit about myself. So that's what this very first podcast is about. And what I really want to do is kind of just dive in to my very first little ebook that I created so long ago. That's called the 8-Hour Abs Diet. And I created that because I had realized, guess what? I was an intermittent faster for over 2 decades, and I didn't even realize it. So if you guys follow me on social media, you know I'm a huge advocate for intermittent fasting. And I am because I stumbled across it. Not because it was a fad by any means, but because it was working wonderfully for me. And I have to tell you how I found out that there was such a thing as intermittent fasting and that I was one was I had a business mentor named Chalene Johnson many years ago, and she had fitness programs, and I was a master trainer for her. And not only that, but I got the opportunity to be on what she called the video talent team. And so anytime that we would go to film a video, she at least, a few of the other cast members always had to diet before going on video. I mean, you want to look your best when you're doing a fitness video. And Chalene was like, you really need, as a business mentor, she's like, you really need to create what she calls a freemium or, like a free ebook. Man, I was racking my brain going, I don't know what to talk about. And she's like, there's something about you that's different, something that people would find interesting. And I finally just spit out the words, I don't eat breakfast. And she's like, oh my gosh. She goes, you don't eat breakfast? And I was like, no. And she goes, you are always camera ready. And she says, I wonder if that's it. And I was like, I really don't know. And so I really started to think about it. And if you actually, and I left that post up, if you go back, my goodness, 10 or 12 years on my Instagram, I have a picture of my abs, and I have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on each ab. And I said an ab for each meal of the day. And that was terrible because that was not my truth, but it was the fitness magazine's truth. It was, what you were hearing all the fitness professionals saying, that you've got to eat those 6 meals a day to keep the metabolism stoked. You've read it. You might still believe that. And so I kind of hid the fact that I didn't eat breakfast. And the reason that I didn't eat breakfast wasn't because I had read an article or, any kind of a study or clinical trial that said that it helped you lose weight or that it was healthy for you. I literally did it because, as a group exercise instructor and a master trainer, and I just felt better teaching my classes, my really high energy classes, on an empty stomach. If I had a lot of liquid or if I had some food in my stomach, it really almost felt like it weighed me down and took my energy from me. So I would have my coffee in the morning, and I would have lots of water, and sometimes I would have a pre-workout, and then I would teach my class. Then I would go home, and then I would make breakfast. And I was doing that since 1999 was when I first started teaching class. I may have done that earlier when I was taking class, so it could have been all the way back to like 1996 or 1997 that I became an intermittent faster. And then not only that, but I wasn't one to eat really late at night either, and neither was my husband. We just felt more comfortable having dinner, and then maybe a little bit afterwards have something sweet or dessert or a bite of something. But we were never any person that would just at 9 o'clock at night or 10 o'clock at night sit down with ice cream or popcorn or anything like that, because neither of us felt that good that way. So when Shalene said, wow, that could be it, that's the start of me looking into what is this intermittent fasting. And so I really started diving into it. Keep in mind that, nutrition has been my fascination. I went to school when I turned 18, got out of high school, and my husband and I moved to Arizona to go to school. And I wanted to be a dietitian, and that's what I went to school for and did all that education. Do not have my degree in dietitian. I'm a nutritionist instead, and I might be able to share that later with you why I chose that path instead. But I had all the education, took all of those classes, and I believe it was 1992 is when the food pyramid came out. And that's also when I graduated high school. Yes, I'm that old. I graduated high school in 1992. And so in school, it was all about the food pyramid. And so, and I fell for it too. I would eat all the fat-free stuff. For breakfast, I remember my husband and I would go to the gym. And on the way home from the gym, we would stop at the grocery store and we would buy fat-free blueberry bagels and put fat-free cream cheese on top of them. Oh my goodness. And that it tasted great, I'll give you that. But when you really think about it, it's very nutrient void. But then again, I'm also, to get off on a tangent, I'm also the parent who raised their kids on top ramen, and they loved macaroni and cheese, and I would always make them, garlic toast, and that was just so, we were all guilty of that. I would have raised my kids so differently today than 25 and 26 years ago. My goodness. But going back to the intermittent fasting, I just really started studying it, and I just became fascinated with the benefits of intermittent fasting, even outside of weight loss. So keep in mind, and every time that you listen to a podcast, to understand that, if a study is cited or anything like that, I promise you're going to be able to find a study that says the exact opposite. So what you really need to do when it comes down to it is try things for yourself. But what I was learning in the books that I was reading was that intermittent fasting was incredibly beneficial for a healthy person. That we kind of got ourselves into the mess, dare I say, of thinking that, number one, we needed to eat low fat, which was a huge fallacy. But above and beyond that we needed to eat right when we woke up. I still to this day see the McDonald's billboard on my way home from any store on the way home, and I see that it says, breakfast still the most important meal of the day and stuff like that. And we were told that, honestly, not because it is, even though for some people, eating first thing in the morning works great for them. But I do want you to understand that it doesn't mean that it is the most important meal of the day. In fact, here recently, Sachin Panda, I hope I said his name right, a genius doctor who really has studied the circadian rhythm. He has a book called The Circadian Code. And one thing that he really stresses for the health of the body is to at least wait an hour before you actually eat in the morning. So even if you don't want to be an intermittent faster, for the healthiest being that you can be is to not eat first thing when you wake up. So even with that, that's really important when it comes to just living by your circadian rhythm, which is a really interesting thing to study. If you haven't looked into it, I really encourage you to as well. It's called The Circadian Code. It's a great book. But anyway, not eating first thing in the morning, especially, you've rested. You've been laying down doing really nothing for 8 hours. There's really no reason to wake up and immediately fuel yourself. Definitely get yourself a nice big glass of water. But by not eating, first thing in the morning, if you can hold off, then what happens is you're really allowing one of our hormones called growth hormone to stay up. Because growth hormone and insulin kind of have they work in opposition. So when your insulin is higher, your growth hormone's lower, and opposite. And so as you're sleeping, your insulin levels, of course, drop pretty dramatically, pretty much to baseline, which allows that human growth hormone to come up. And what do they call your human growth hormone? It is your fountain of youth, and it helps keep you young. And as you can imagine, once you start getting older in those 20s and in those 30s, it really starts to plummet. So you want to do anything that you can to take advantage of when it's raised. And by not eating first thing in the morning, you allow it to stay up just a little bit longer and allow your body to continue to work using those fat stores instead of the energy that you consume while you eat. So I do get asked all the time, what about exercising? So I exercise in the morning. Do I need to eat immediately after I exercise? And again, I'm going to tell you, you do what's best for you. But from my own personal experience, which I shared, 10 or 15 minutes ago, for me, man, I had 5 times the energy not having, what felt like to me a brick in my stomach. And studies have shown that you are okay to not eat right after you work out. Now again, just like people telling you that breakfast is the most important meal of the day, you will see supplement companies especially telling you to have, your carbohydrates and your protein right after you work out. Now, if you are literally trying to be Rock's or Dwayne Johnson's twin, and you are going for, I'm so bad at measurements, what's my bicep? It's probably 12 inches. Going for 25-inch biceps, then, getting protein right after your workout, might be advantageous. But I personally have always worked out cardio and strength training fasted, and I never eat right after. Sometimes it can be an hour afterwards, sometimes it can be 2 hours afterwards, sometimes it could be many if I get really busy or something happens, but it's never right after. And so that 45-minute window that you hear of is probably a supplement company telling you how important it is. And it also depends on your goals. And from my experience with working with thousands of women, they're usually at the more fat loss state than they are at the muscle gain. Now your body's pretty much going to do one or the other. Now you can, lose fat and gain muscle at the same time, but it's not going to be in a parallel manner. One's going to be a lot more than the other. So if you're really working on gaining muscle, you want to eat in maintenance, you want maybe have a little bit of a surplus, have lots of protein in your diet, and you want to eat, fairly soon after your workout. But if you are wanting to lose fat, and that's, at the top of your list, can still gain muscle, just not quite as dramatically, but that fat loss will be dramatic. You take advantage. Growth hormone also lifts when you exercise. So if you happen to work out in the morning, guess what? You don't eat first thing in the morning, your growth hormone's going up a little bit. Then you exercise, your growth hormone goes up a little bit more, and you're taking advantage of low insulin levels, high fat loss, energy usage, and the growth hormone being up there. And I really think that's one of the reasons, why as of right now, at 47 years old, I still have a very low body fat, and I'm still gaining muscle. I If you look on my Instagram, I have done IGTVs showing, because I get DEXA scans all the time, showing that my fat loss is staying where it's at, or even sometimes it goes down a little bit, but my muscle mass keeps going up, which I think, if you look at the statistics, it's kind of hard when you're getting in your upper 40s. But I'm able to do that, and I'm not an anomaly by any means. I'm able to do that and not eat breakfast first thing in the morning, exercise on an empty stomach, and also not eat immediately after I work out, and it still works really well. So that's a huge question I get. And I just want you to think common sense wise as well. So I'm sure you're guilty of it. I am as well. You have a weekend where you might indulge a whole lot, right? And you're going to put on fat pretty easily by doing that, But how hard is it to put on muscle? You certainly can't put on a good amount of muscle in a weekend. So if your body is storing that fat very easily to use for fuel, but it also does not build muscle very quickly whatsoever, what do you think it's going to use for its fuel source when there's not, food energy coming from what you're eating, and instead it needs to find energy elsewhere? Is it going to break down the muscle that it knows it has the hardest time building, or is it going to go to the fat stores that it put there for the very reason of using it for energy when there's not food energy available? So I just want you to think about that. Another really common question I get is if I'm suffering from adrenal fatigue, or I have high cortisol. I have heard that fasting increases cortisol production, and it does, but very, very minutely, and it's very acute, meaning that it's not the kind of the adrenal stress and the cortisol elevation that comes from a boss that you don't like, or being stuck in traffic for an hour. It's a very quick, healthy release of cortisol, just like when you sleep and it's time to get up, your body releases a little bit of cortisol. It's what happens with fight or flight. So when you're exercising, your body is feeling that it's being taxed, but not taxed in a bad way. Just like, in the middle of the night, 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning, your body's like, we got to start waking this person up. So they release a little bit of cortisol. It's the same thing. Cortisol is actually not a bad thing, just like insulin isn't a bad thing. But when too much is released and for too long is when we see the problem. But when it's just a little quick blip because you need to wake up in the morning, or because you are exercising in a fasted state, is a very quick, natural response for your body, and not something to worry about that's going to cause long-term problems. So here I am, teaching intermittent fasting now for I almost want to say it's probably almost 10 years now. Been doing it for almost 25 years. Still love it and still find so much benefit. But one of the things that I really want you to embrace about fasting is that it's not magic when it comes to weight loss. So just typical calorie restriction and intermittent fasting can probably yield you the same results. But even though there are some studies that will say one way or the other, generally speaking, they both kind of give you the same results when it comes to weight loss and fat loss. But for some people, if they just wait a little bit before they wake up and they don't eat right before they go to bed, all of those health benefits aside, it helps you with weight loss, because you have, it's just a natural kind of calorie restriction, because instead of eating, 14, 15, 16 hours a day, you're only eating 8, 10, or 12 hours a day. So you just don't have that much time to eat as much. And your body gets very, very used to that. So if you are considering becoming an intermittent faster, I really want you to know that if you eat breakfast first thing in the morning because you've created that habit, it's going to be a little bit difficult to change that habit. But I'm telling you, you're strong, and anything that you set your mind to, you can do. So I highly encourage you to stair step it. there are two types of people out there. There are people who, and I'm number one, people that are like, you know what? I'm drawing the line in the sand and I'm not doing this anymore. That's how I do good. But there are some people that are like, you know what? I would rather, once a week cut my eating back a half an hour or cut it back an hour once a week until you get to that sweet spot and slowly make that change. So that's going to have to be your decision. But to just prepare yourself for that and know that it'll get a little bit tougher before it gets easier, but before you know it, and I've seen this in so many clients of mine, there's almost a flip of a switch, and then you can't ever imagine going back to waking up and just eating first thing in the morning. And even more importantly than that is not eating right before you go to bed. Now, if there's anything that I tell any of my clients, if there's one change that I can help you make in your life, it's not eating right before you go to bed. You, your children, your parents, depending how old you are, it wreaks so much havoc on your body to have a full belly when you go to bed. So we have two different systems. We're sympathetic or parasympathetic, right? Sympathetic is the fight or flight or the high energy, and the parasympathetic is what they call the rest and digest, or just where you're in a relaxed state. And when you're parasympathetic is when you're going to sleep. But when you have a belly full of food and you just have all of the sugar in your system, it's really hard for your body to get into that parasympathetic state where it can relax, rest, and digest. And when I say digest, I'm not talking about what's in your belly. I'm talking about what's in the small intestines and the large intestines and getting it through your system. Because when you go to bed and then you just instantly go to lay down, number one, a lot of us suffer from acid reflux and stuff like that by having that food sit there when we lay down. It keeps all of the gastric juices and the bile going, and it keeps your body putting all of its energy and its blood into your digestive system instead of your brain and your muscles, which when you sleep, that is the time that your body repairs itself. And it can't repair itself when it's too busy digesting. So if you allow bare minimum 2 hours, if not 3 hours before you go to bed so that your stomach can pretty much almost empty, it can take anywhere from 3 to 5 hours for all of that food to leave your stomach, then you are in such a better position to get into a more restful, deep sleep where you also get the opportunity to do some resting, repairing, damage control for both the brain. And then if you are an exerciser and you are lifting those heavy weights, your muscles grow when you rest. And all of that repair happens when you rest. But if you're not giving your body the opportunity to go where it really needs to, and instead it's just digesting food that it honestly really doesn't need at that time, then you're really doing yourself a disservice. So intermittent fasting is tremendous in the way that it can help with insulin resistance. It can help, with appetite control and hormones. It can help with fat loss. It can help with so many different things above and beyond the fact that it can keep you, lean up into your 40s. And I'm still a huge advocate for it. And I do want to put the disclaimer out there that they do say that it isn't for everyone. And I would have to agree with that. I just read, so this is coming from a doctor, not necessarily me, but any person under the age of 12 should never fast. I always say, if you're still in your growing stages, you shouldn't fast. If you're pregnant or if you're nursing, if you have a history of just not having the best relationship with food, fasting may not be the best for you. Or if you have any other kind of conditions that you might want to talk with your doctor, then it may not be best for you. But I want you to think about this. So we as humans, can live fine just sitting and walking our life away. But exercise is a stressor to the body. It stresses the body, but it causes the body to take that stress and to become stronger. And intermittent fasting is no different. So I know we love food. I love food. And I understand eating 6 times a day and eating when you first wake up and eating that late night snack sounds better. But so does maybe sitting on the couch all day versus getting up and lifting weights or doing some yoga or taking a run. But there's things that we do to and for our bodies that make them healthier, stronger, and more resilient. So exercising for the healthy person, is no different than intermittent fasting for the healthy person. And so I just want you to look at it that way. So play with it. You might be the kind of person who genuinely loves eating first thing in the morning. It's just, you get up, you have a cup of coffee, and you make yourself, a beautiful vegetable omelet. Cool. But maybe try to pull back your eating just a little bit sooner in the day and see how that works. Or you can do the complete opposite. Maybe you'd be okay with not eating first thing in the morning. You can go a few hours, and that allows you to maybe have, dinner around 6 or 7, still allowing yourself those 2 or 3 hours before you go to bed to let that belly empty out a little bit and see how you do then. It is so personalized. That's the wonderful thing about it. And it doesn't tell you what you should eat within those, some people fast for 20 hours and some people fast for 12 hours. So you find your sweet spot. For me, it's always been just about 8 hours. I call it my 11-7 rule. So I eat from 11 to 7 and I pretty much sleep from 11 to 7. Right now it's winterish, so it's getting darker sooner, so I'm more like 9 to 6, but 11 to 7 both. So, I eat within that 8-hour window, and I can easily get all of the nutrition that I need in my 3 meals a day, eating every 3 to 4 hours. And that's another thing that before I close this off to touch on is the fact that if you don't eat so often, because you are legitimately not hungry every 2 hours. Your body, unless there's something going on, the hormones are a little out of balance, you've got some habits going on, but your true self is not telling you that you're hungry every 2 hours. And you got to listen to your body. If you really listen to what your body is telling you and not maybe, some receptors, some dopamine receptors saying, you really want some sugar right now, then you really should only feel the need to eat. Physiologically feel the need to eat every 3 to 5 hours. And to allow, because that's about how long, like I said earlier, for food to come out of your stomach. How can you possibly be hungry when you still have food in your stomach? So to let that food go through, I can easily get all of my nutrition. I eat, give or take, let's just say 17 to 1800 calories a day, which, allows me to have, about 500 to 600 calories each meal. And you're probably going, how? Remember, Melissa, the Melissa Maid Show, the Maid Diet, which will be another episode of me talking about, we're talking about intermittent fasting and how it doesn't tell you what to eat. You can eat what you want. We're talking about when to eat, not what to eat. But the Maid Diet in and of itself, when I get to go into that, I do believe that good healthy fat is good for you. And it's very easy to get in the nutritious calories that you need when you do have enough fat in your diet and you aren't suckered into that low fat lifestyle that ruined us for 50 years. So anyway, I'm going to close this out and just thank you for being here with me for the very first episode of the Melissa Maid Show. I don't want this to be about me. I will share things here and there, but what I genuinely want to do is to give you access to some of the most amazing people. You guys follow me. You see the books, the huge library, the hundreds and hundreds of books that I have. And for now, what I'm doing is reaching out to those authors because they struck a chord with me. They taught me. They gave me an incredible aha moment that I want you to hear for yourself because these are life-changing authors and doctors and broadcasters and nutritionists and dietitians. And it's just, seriously, I promise to bring you some amazing people with life-changing stories and education along the way. So, like I said before, thank you so much for joining me for this very first one. You're going to see my face every once in a while. Well, you see it every time, but just my face every once in a while. But hopefully you will see somebody next to me, and we get to listen to amazing people together. So until then, thank you so much for being here with me and being persistent and not letting me give up on the idea of doing a podcast. I'm looking forward to this journey with you. And as always, I appreciate you guys so much. Wow, we've reached the end. But before I leave you, I'd love to hear from you. After all, it's not every day that someone reaches out and asks for your opinion. And to me, your opinion does matter. So please share this episode with anyone that you think needs to hear this message. And remember to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. My name is Melissa McAllister. And until next time, thank you for being your own health advocate.